Hello, Malban here. This is a short video in response to Isidro Campos' questions regarding rotation. I've loaded the XML file you sent me with the Ontario, you see it over here, and I just want to try different angles like you suggested, rotating clockwise and anti-clockwise. So I just configured Z angle 60 degrees, and I think with the arrow is clockwise. 10 steps, do it, and you can see it rotating sometimes. Why doesn't it rotate? Because it's on scenario. So you see it rotate, it's clockwise, and I delete it and do it anti-clockwise, and it rotates anti-clockwise. I can do that likewise with other angles. I hope that's right. Clear. Do it. This is, well, the top goes to the front and I do it the other way. Clear. And the top goes to the back. So to me it seems like it's rotating okay. Let's test the Y angle, Y axis. Clear. This is clockwise. Do it. It rotates, well, to that side, and if I do it the other way, it rotates to the other side. So to me it seems like it's working okay. Well, the problem is I don't know what you really did, and you have to show me or explain to me what actually does not work. So yeah. So anyway, you asked me about the speed of the animation. I will create a bin file from that animation now. Draw sync runnable, create, running, and now Vecci is starting. So that is a speed of the current animation, which is quite slow. I get that. One thing is the whole drawing is quite slow. You can see that using this button over here, show tracker, and you will see that it uses many cycles to do this drawing. 30,000 cycles is 50 Hertz, so we are about at 80,000 cycles. That is, well, quite a lot slower. It's nearly, don't know, 20 Hertz or something like that. So it's quite slow because the amount of lines are ready. But here you see the source code of the actual binary generated, and there's a delay configured here. It's a delay of 5 rounds before an animation is changed. So if you change that to 1 and compile it again, run it again, then you will see that the animation will be quite a little bit faster. Yeah, you see that doesn't seem quite so flickery. And well, anyway, the drawing you did does not have many connected, well, what shall I call it, paths. You can see that the draw sync list starts anew from the middle point with the move tool to the vectors it must draw. And if you look at the vector list generated, these 0, 1 lines are always sync, and preferred or needed, what shall I say, sync should be every 20 lines or something like that. This is the default I chose. If you reset all every 20 lines, it's quite enough. It's still a fairly stable image, but since all the lines are not connected within your vector drawing, it syncs all the time, and that makes it quite slow. So what you should do, if you are able to, is connect as many lines as possible. You see this one over here is actually can be drawn in one path. So what you should do is press the continue mode, right click here, join here, join here, join here, and then these vectors should be joined. You can't see it here because it's three-dimensional, and the third dimension is not shown in this setting. And I gather these settings are also not so quite well done for you. You can see it here. This list is now connected, but these lists over here should be connected too. I'm in the middle of programming something new that you might probably use if you shift click in the future, not yet. Shift click this button over here, a new window pops up and you've got a 3D view over here too. This is actually the grid. You can switch on the grid or off. And this whole thing is three-dimensional, so you can do all the 3 dimensions over here if you want to, and you can still edit your vectors. You can yeah, this is a thing I still have to figure out, how to correctly move the things to 3-dimensional. I'm in the middle of that. Once that is done, I will release this one. You can also do a 3-dimensional grid, but I warn you right away, a 3-dimensional grid is just a cloud of points that you cannot actually use. So I switch on the 3rd dimension for the grid, and then you see, well, these are all the points in the grid, but it's not really meaningful. You can do rotation over here, and you can select points, move them with the mouse. Once this is working okay, you can there it is. If you middle click, you can switch to vectors like usual. You can move vectors, and you see over here these vectors are all not connected. This is what should be done. These vectors should be connected wherever possible, so that the sync list is not syncing all the time. You can choose in which axis to move. These are the move checkboxes. If I now do anything, it does not move at all. If I just switch on X, then you can move this vector only in the X axis, regardless of the direction you choose. You move the mouse. Likewise with the Y direction, likewise with the Z direction. Or you can switch them all on, but on a 3-dimensional projection it is really hard to tell in which way, direction you really move. So I can't recommend to switch all these on, but I gather with these settings, I switch off the grid, you can probably edit 3-dimensional vector lists a little bit better. In this window you can only edit vector lists. You cannot put new vectors or new points in the drawing, because I have not figured out how to make this cloud sensible enough that you can actually draw points within these cloud. So the actual new point, new faces, new lines you have to do here or in the respective other views, but you can edit everything over here. Once this is done, that should help edit 3D vector lists, I think. So when you really want to speed up, you have to edit this thing and connect as many points as you can, and preferable connect them, well, 2 on 2. There are naturally vectors in a 3-dimensional drawing that are connected in a 3-way. If at all possible, do not do that. Just leave then that connection out and do 2-dimensional paths. Well, I don't know if I really made myself understood now, but well, I tried. Didn't you have another question? Let me look at the Facebook page right now. So, well, that was clockwise, anti-clockwise. Flickering, you asked, would it affect flickering if I connected where possible and fill gaps to the final object, though it increases vectors? Actually, no. If you connect these vectors as I just suggested, then that will not make a big difference. You could actually insert move vectors, but the vectors from the point 0 are also move vectors. there's one little overhead that you have to return to 0, but it's not that much. And I think a drawing like this does have many two-dimensional paths that connect that. It should actually be working alright without inserting special move vectors. Yeah, I think that answered the questions now. Sometimes it's just easier to answer them on a living object than to write very long emails or Facebook entries. So I hope this helped a little bit, and thank you and bye. Actually, now that I just looked at Facebook again, you did have another question. A question regarding, I read again. A moment, what was it? To scroll. And is there a way to do a smooth transition, for example, when you set an object as in the distance and then resize to simulate it approaches? Animation builds the intermediate frames by its own. Well, Vecci does not do that, simply because it's not necessary. Usually you use vector lists in your own program, and therefore it's not necessary for Vecci to scale vector lists. Well, you can scale vector lists, but it does not support special output or animations with it, because if you do a Vectrex program, it is just one value, the scale value, with which you draw the vector list. So there's not an animation setting for Vecci to do that, because in the program you can do that with 1 byte. So if you actually want to do that in your own vector list, there is no way other, at least at the moment, than to program in some small way. So here we go again with your vector list that we saw before. If you do like you did before, draw your sync list, you have got your vector list over here, and if you press this button you run. If you press this button you actually open the program you generated in a Vide, in a Vectrex editor. I do that, and here you can actually program a little bit. You see the delay reset we had before, change that to 2, that is a little bit faster. And I do a little bit copy and paste now, but actually what you need is a value for your scale. We enter a new variable, distance we call it, and we place it in our RAM 1 byte forward at, well, that value. You've got to initialize that value to something sensible. We start off small, so let's say we load register with 1 and store it to the location we just built up here. So now the variable distance is initialized with 1. That is a very small vector list, very far in the distance. These two values over here actually determine the drawing size of your object. This one places the object to some location. Here it is at 0, 0, so this is not really needed, but it's in there anyway because, well, that's the way I did it. And this value 80 over here, that is the actual size of the vector list. If we do that a little bit smaller, let's say we do it 40, then you can already see if you run it. Here in Vide you have got the same button with this one, you run it too. So you see it's a little bit smaller. If I put a 20 in here, it's smaller again. So what we need to do is automatically let this value grow with each maybe animation step or something. So what we then do is we do not load B with a fixed size of 20s, we load B with a variable we just defined, distance. So now we have to make sure that distance is growing, so the object comes nearer, so to say. Here I do a copy and paste from something I did before. This is actually load the variable to register A, increase register A. If register A is smaller than 60, then overstep the next instruction and store to distance. So we just increase the distance by 1 till it is 60. If it is 60, then we load register A with 1 and store it also to the distance, so it just resets. What this actually does is with each animation step the distance is increased or decreased actually from the viewer's point, and the animation will, well, I started and you see it. It starts off small and should grow, which it doesn't, so we've done something wrong. Gotta check that. Load distance, and I pause so I can check. Well, stupid me, that button was not pause, it was finish video, so, well, anyway, figured out what happened. This copy and paste was actually right and wrong. The distance is increased each reset of animation and not each animation step. So you see this grows very, very slowly now. If I take this one to over here, then with each animation step the image is moving towards us. So I compile that again, and then you'll see that it comes nearer faster. And that has nothing to do with building new vector lists or anything, but that's a Vectrex capability of scaling vectors. So I think that was your last question open. I'm sorry that Vecci does not in itself support that feature, but as you see, it's altogether 2, 4, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12 lines in the code to achieve that effect, and I don't think Vecci will support that automatically. So, well, that's it then. Bye.